Hello everyone, I am Chanchal Kumar Sharma and I just wanted to share an update about an upcoming special issue of Publius-The Journal of Federalism published by Oxford University Press. The title of this special issue is Multilevel Polities in Times of Crisis. I am co-editing this special issue with my friend Professor Wilfried Swenden.
My name is Wilfried Swenden, and I'm teaching politics at the University of Edinburgh. Now, this special issue will appear as issue 2, 2026. It's currently in production, and what we're trying to do there is to find a response to the question how federal systems or multi-level polities more broadly have fared in situations of crisis.
This project grew out of a fantastic conference at IIC, India International Center, New Delhi, made possible by the Hans Seidel Foundation thanks to Stephen Burkhardt, Volker Plan, and Rahul Khera. We are especially grateful to Publius editors Professor Paul Knowlett and Professor Philip Rocco for their careful work on each and every manuscript and bringing this special issue to life. My deepest thanks to Professor Patrick Holner, Vice President of KIGA, for his consistent support throughout this journey. Finally, thanks to all our authors and reviewers for their hard work. We are now in the final stretch and it's looking really strong.
The benefit of actually bringing out this special issue now is that COVID-19 is already some way behind us, but that also allows us to consider to some extent what its long-term implications have been and how it may compare with other crises that the world or federal countries have endured in recent times or in their not too distant history.
In this special issue, we examine crisis governance in multi-level political systems and ask what works, when, and why in terms of managing the crisis situations.
What we did is basically, first of all, use a working definition of crisis for which we drew on Rosenthal and others. And they operationalize a crisis or define, if you wish, a crisis as a situation of great uncertainty, which compels politicians to act swiftly, because if they don't, the social system in which they function and the values associated with that system which they hold dear may be at threat of collapse.
We examine crisis governance from 3 angles. First, we compare how different types of crises were managed within a particular country, specifically focusing on the cases of the United States, the United Kingdom, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Second, we examine subnational variation in crisis response. That is how and why outcomes differ across constituent units within a country. We do this for the cases of India and Switzerland. Finally, we undertake cross-national comparisons, comparing countries and continents covering the OECD countries, Latin America, Europe, and global samples to draw broader conclusions, to draw broader lessons. Essentially, we are trying to understand what explains the successes and failures of crisis management in different contexts. So this special issue is truly special in the sense that it brings together insights on the crisis governance strategies from all over the world and asks that when a major crisis hits, whether it is a pandemic, a natural disaster, or an economic meltdown, how do different countries and different levels of government within countries respond?
Now, how would federal systems actually fare in situations of crisis, or by extension, multi-level systems more broadly? And here there are divergent expectations that derive from the federal or multi-level governance literature itself, and then also expectations that derive more from the broader contextual factors within which these multi-level systems operate.
What leads to better outcomes? Scholars often wonder whether having a federal system helps, or does it hinder crisis management? Should we centralize power in times of crisis or let local authorities handle things because they have the on-the-ground knowledge? This special issue tackles these questions head-on.
So when we talk about the federal or multi-level governance literature themselves, one of the most seminal authors in this field, Lisbeth Hoge, Gary Marks, have developed this post-functional theory of multi-level governance. And it plays with the tension that exists within multi-level systems between functional imperatives and identitarian pressures. So the argument is that if we have a competence division that follows this functional imperative, then federal systems might do well, because already they are sorted in such a way that issues that require localized responses are decentralized, and those that are leaning more on resource capacity and solidarity are centralized. Of course, we also know that from that same post-functional theory of multi-level governance, that there are identitarian pressures that may push in different directions. That even though there might be a functional imperative to do things together, the politicians or citizens within the state may not be compelled to cede authority to higher levels to cooperate. So identity pressures may be one component, but then, and this is where we enter more in the contextual realm, there is of course also variation across states, multi-level states, in the direction of leadership or in the party political preferences of governments. And if a federal system operates in a very pluralized party political setting, then the kind of cooperation that is required to do certain things together in moments of crisis may be missing. So one of the things then, therefore, that we try to look at in this special issue is, firstly, does intergovernmental cooperation materialize in multi-level polities when the need arises? And if not, why not and where not? Secondly, what is the significance of federal design itself, the way in which self-rule and shared rule are operationalized within the political system, the way to which in which intergovernmental relations have already been developed and institutionalized, for instance. And then thirdly, what is the staying power of crisis? Is a crisis something that is dealt with, and if dealt with successfully, will then politics after the crisis more or less resume to what was there before? But more particularly, will the multi-level system operate and be organized internally in the same way as was before? Or does the crisis leave important legacies that fundamentally alter the way in which a multi-level system operates?
And let me tell you, my dear friends, the findings are fascinating and illuminating. The consensus is that constitutional form alone does not explain crisis management or performance. In other words, just being federal or unitary does not automatically make a country better or worse at handling crisis. What does matter is a combination of what we call crisis governance capacity and political leadership. This crisis governance capacity comes from several things working together. For instance, it comes from having a robust administrative and physical infrastructure. It comes from having social safety nets in place. It comes from having trustworthy crisis communication channels. And last but not the least, it comes from having effective intergovernmental forums and coordination mechanisms which can prevent blame shifting and turn overlapping responsibilities into compensatory action. But even with all that structural capacity, the nuts and bolts in place, success ultimately depends on politics. Because it takes committed leadership, committed political leadership, and a collaborative political culture to turn capacity into outcomes. When these conditions meet, when these conditions come together, that is, the capacity, commitment, and culture come together, we see the best outcomes due to the synergic impact of, number one, a clear national direction which is coherent, convincing, inclusive, and most importantly, non-polarizing. And number two, adequately empowered and responsive local implementation. By contrast, if leaders are politically or ideologically polarized or play strategic blame games, even a well-prepared system will struggle to minimize the loss of lives and livelihoods. To put it succinctly, and this is one of the takeaways, state capacity sets the stage and politics decides the outcome. There is also another angle our contributors examine. They don't just ask how institutions shape crisis governance, but also flip the question. They consider reverse causality as well. They ask whether crisis governance changes the long-run institutional balance. Do emergencies permanently shift power to the center or push it down to regions? The evidence suggests that usually any shifts in authority during a crisis are temporary. And once the crisis ends, things tend to slip back to the status quo. However, there are exceptions where a crisis can trigger enduring changes, especially when a new policy meant to be a temporary fix suits the interests and incentives of the influential political actors and political incumbents. This is just a glimpse, dear friends, as there are many more insightful and novel findings in this special issue, with excellent contributions from John Kincaid, Jan Egbert Sturm, Frederick Varon, James Michel, Olga Shutsova, Simon Hugh, Pascal Schiarini, Vera Eichenauer, Maya Sajic, Lucas Gonzalez, Johanna Schnabel, Simon Tubo, Hannah Kleider, Marius Guderian, Onsale Gurel Bairali, and Mario Kuling. We are happy to announce that one of the pieces has already been published online ahead of print, and it's by Lucas Gonzalez. He compares 18 Latin American countries and finds that open conflict between national and subnational authorities is associated with higher death toll, while cooperation is linked to better outcomes. More articles will come online soon, and we'll share the links here as they appear.
Thank you for listening to this. Hopefully you will enjoy what we have pulled together. I would, apart from thanking Chanchal, also wish to thank the editors of the journal itself, who have been very helpful, cooperative, and understanding for any delays that we encountered. And of course, I would very much like to thank the many contributors to this special issue who put their faith in us and who stayed with us and in the end helped to make this special issue so much better than it otherwise would have been. So I wish you a lot of pleasure and hopefully fruitful interaction with the contents of our special issue. Thank you.
Thanks again to all the authors, reviewers, and the editors for their thoughtful work and collaboration.